The first 2 or 3 years, it's very hard work for less output. And so that sounds nice, but what it means essentially, if you put it in your personal lives, okay, you work harder, you earn less. Okay, that's not a very tantalizing proposition.
One of your more recent initiatives is around creating a truly regenerative company.
Yeah.
What is a regenerative Nestle compared to a Nestle that eliminates waste?
Yeah. So look, building on all the comments that were made this morning, at a very high philosophical level, in a world around us where the biology and geology where we live is circular, essentially, when you have a linear process, even if you try to reduce then the footprint of that process, you create disbalances, and especially when you scale it up and make it ever bigger. And hence, turning many of these linear processes into circular processes, I think, is part of the solution. And we just saw a perfect example here from agriculture. So you heard about the commitment, so 50% sourcing by 2030 from regenerative sources. There's an intermediate goal of 20% sourcing by 2025. We're well on our way towards that. I think supporting these regenerative systems is a key aspect in everything we do. If you ask me about a definition of regeneration, I like a very high-level one that basically puts the respect for life and life at the center of everything you do. And you saw it here with how you treat the soil. So rather than putting some product made from fossil fuel into it, you're trying to feed it with living organisms and really sort of rejuvenate and strengthen some of the natural cycles that have been around for ages and are time-tested, as was mentioned this morning.
What is the bigger obstacle in that journey? Is it maybe the insistence of staff, or also just legacy cultures in an organization? Is it regulatory obstacles? Is it consumer behavior? Or all three of them?
Look, before we start looking inside the organization, let's look at the economics everyone is facing. So let's look at these farmers here. I think what they're up to is absolutely worthwhile. But after visiting a lot of farms and hearing people's journey towards that regenerative approach, the story is always the same. The first 2 or 3 years, it's very hard work for less output. And so that sounds nice, but what it means essentially, if you put it in your personal lives, okay, you work harder, you earn less. Okay, that's not a very tantalizing proposition. And it clearly shows that people who are interested in that, they need technological help and assistance, and they also need financial assistance to make it happen. If those are the obstacles in the world's most advanced economies, imagine in developing markets how much harder it is to change from some of these traditional farming practices to regenerative practices. And that's why I think we have the work cut out for all of us. After 2 or 3 years, in some cases, depending on the crop, 4 or 5 or 6 years, usually things turn, and then you have not only good restoration on the output, but also you do it in a much more sustainable way compared to the way before. And so overcoming that hump, I think that is where we've developed this concept of the just transition, where we try where we can to give that financial and technological assistance, and that is collectively what we have to do. The first unit of the new, almost without exception, tends to be more expensive than the last unit of the old. And hence, graduating to that and then with scale over time, bringing that down to make it more affordable, that's the challenge.